Good afternoon. Welcome back to Passionate World Talk Radio Network, to enlighten, to educate, to entertain. On today's episode of Lest We Forget Historical, we are going to do a mini series about vice presidents, their roles, how they're chosen, the Constitution, all that great stuff, because let's face it, nobody really knows or understands how vice presidents are really chosen. And despite the fact that things pretty much go according to schedule, there are some things that cannot happen. For example, this morning I was reading an article about the fact that the president and the vice president cannot come from the same state. It's in the Constitution. Look it up. I never knew that. They never taught me that in civics class. And I suspect that a lot of people have never been taught much about their government, even in high school or, shall I dare say it, colleges, junior colleges, and universities, or even in homeschooling, which is supposed to be superior, or mentioned in Montessori, which is the alternative to sending your kid to a regular school district. I digress. We're going to start today with the basic history of vice presidents, some of the do's, some of the don'ts, and what you need to know about the controversy with Trump's running partner and the Democratic nominee for president, and who she can choose and have as her VP. So let the games begin. Or I have taken my inspiration and my knowledge from Elizabeth Nix, who wrote an article October 29th, 2023. It was originally published on April 7th, 2017. Title, 9 Things You Should Know About the Vice Presidency, and always hesitated to ask for various and sundry reasons. Number 1. The job used to go to the person who accumulated the most votes, coming in second to the President of the United States. The people who put the Constitution together and wrote it up set up a system by which presidents were chosen by the members of an electoral college, and each elector got to vote for 2 people. The candidate with the most electoral votes, it had to be a majority, became president, while the second place finisher was awarded the VP title. In 1796, 2 men from opposing parties, John Adams and Thomas Jefferson, were elected president and vice president, and we all know how unspectacular that administration was. The candidate with the most electoral votes was nominated. However, the flaws in this particular system continued to be exposed in 1800, when Jefferson and his party's preferred choice was Aaron Burr, the infamous Aaron Burr. Pulled in the same number of electoral votes, sending the contest to the House of Representatives, which selected Jefferson for president on the 36th ballot. By 1804, the 12th Amendment had been ratified, replacing the original system, with the current one requiring electors to cast a separate vote for the president and for the vice president, and it continues to this day. Lucky us. 2. Who put the Constitution together, but what happened? They didn't give the VP much or anything to do, and that's still pretty much the case. You don't know most of the people who are vice presidents. So in addition to assuming the presidency of the United States, and if it becomes vacant, the Constitution gives the vice president 2 main responsibilities, one of which is to serve as president of the Senate and to break tie votes. John Adams cast the highest number of the breaking votes, 29. By comparison, Joe Biden cast 0 tie-breaking votes during his 8 years in office, while Mike Pence so far has broken 13 tie votes. To date, vice presidents have cast more than 250 tie-breaking votes, according to the Senate Historical Office. Following a presidential election, the VP's other constitutional duty is to oversee the formal counting of electoral college votes before a joint session of Congress. Number 3. Up until recently, the VP had no official home. I always thought he was in the White House. What do I know? What do you know? It wasn't until the 1970s that Congress designated a home on the grounds of the U.S. Naval Observatory in Northwest Washington as the official residence of the vice president. Before that, the VPs lived in their own homes. However, the cost of keeping these homes safe continued to rise over time. And in 1974, Congress designated the 19th century Queen Anne-style structure at the observatory as the VP's abode. The first VP to live there was Walter Mondale, who moved in with his family in 1977. Since then, each vice president has called number 1 observatory circle home. Number 4, when a VP was sworn in on foreign soil and died soon after he took the oath. William King, never heard of him. Unlucky Vice President number 13 missed his March 4th, 1853 inauguration in Washington because he was in Cuba trying to recover from tuberculosis. After Congress passed special legislation permitting King to take the oath of office on foreign soil, he was sworn in on March 24th in Cuba, making him the first and the last to take the oath of office outside of America. Didn't know you could do that either. I bet half of you didn't know either. Good stuff to know for trivia pursuit. The next month, King left Cuba and sailed to the U.S., arriving at his plantation in Alabama on April 17th. He died the next day, and his tenure in office remains the shortest of any U.S. vice president. We had 2 VPs quit. John Calhoun, America's 7th vice president, served under John Quincy Adams, John Adams' son, starting in 1825. However, in the 1828 election, Calhoun teamed with presidential candidate Andrew Jackson, who defeated Adams. Calhoun was the second of only 2 VPs ever to serve 2 different chief executives. The first was George Clinton, who from 1805 to 1812 was VP under Thomas Jefferson, and James Madison. After clashing, I guess it was their personalities, one would suspect. Calhoun was elected to fill a vacant U.S. Senate seat in 1832 and quit the vice presidency. He was the only VP to resign until 1973 when Spiro Agnew, Richard Nixon's vice president, stepped down after being charged with tax evasions and taking bribes. And our government, and we point the fingers at other governments overseas for the same exact type of corruption. Some got dumped. Abraham Lincoln didn't meet Hannibal Hamlin, his first-term vice president, until shortly after their election. VPs were selected in those days by political parties. When Lincoln ran for re-election in 1864, Hamlin, a former Republican senator from Maine, was dropped as his running mate in favor of pro-union Southerner and Democrat Andrew Jackson in an effort to balance the ticket. That didn't work out too well when he became president, especially during construction. If you don't know any of this history, folks, I suggest you look it up because we have another historical presidential campaign and vice president campaign coming up in November. Among other chief executives who replaced their VPs is Franklin Roosevelt. FDR's VP for his first term was John Nance Garner, who cheerfully described the vice president as, quote, not worth a bucket of warm piss, unquote. Ran unsuccessfully for the presidential nomination against his boss in 1940. Henry Wallace was FDR's third-term VP, but was ditched for Harry Truman when the president ran for a fourth term. And some presidents went without a second in command. Who knew? Prior to the ratification of the 25th Amendment in 1967, there was no official procedures filling a vacancy for the vice presidency. If a VP passed away or moved into the Oval Office because the president had died, the VP slot would stay empty until the end of the presidential term. Before 1967, 8 presidents and 7 vice presidents died while in office, adding up to a total of some 37 years that the U.S. was without a vice president. Today, if the VP office becomes vacant, the president nominates a successor, who then must be confirmed by a majority of both houses of Congress. Number 8. For more than a century, no sitting VP broke the Van Bruin jinx. How about that? Now, I never heard of the Van Bruin jinx. Wonder what that's all about. Let's see. Vice President Martin Van Bruin was elected to succeed President Andrew Jackson in 1836 and went on to serve a single term in office. After that, no incumbent VP won the White House or broke the so-called jinx until George H.W. Bush in 1988. In the century between Van Buren and Bush, 8 chief executives died in office and 1 resigned, and their vice presidents became the president. No VP since Bush has been elected president. Al Gore attempted to do so in 2000, but lost to George W. Bush. Well, we know that the jinx has been broken because Biden was vice president to Obama, and he became president of the United States. So much for history. Number 9, several of the vice presidents have been Nobel Prize winners. Charles Dawes, who served under Calvin Coolidge from 1925 to 1929, was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize for 1925 for his work on what became known as the Dawes Plan, reparation payment plan for Germany following World War I. Al Gore, VP from 1993 to 2001 under Bill Clinton, won the prize for 2007 for his efforts to raise awareness about climate change. And additionally, Theodore Roosevelt, vice president from March 1901 until September of that year, when he became president following William McKinley's assassination, was given the 1906 prize for negotiating the end of the Russo-Japanese War, 1904 to 1905. So, my friends, stay tuned. The series will continue next week about the Constitution, about how modern-day presidents choose their VPs, and especially about how people are getting very uncomfortable with Mr. Trump's choice for vice president. Thank you very much for listening. You can hear this all over again at youtube.com/PWR Network, pwtalkradio.com, facebook.com/Passionate World Radio, https://passionateworldtalkradio.com/blogs. And this program is sponsored by 2 companies. One, Ruby, RUBI.ai. And you can find all the information and a demo and the place to sign up with at https://esc73.tryrubi.ai. And the second thing, we offer the Obstacles of Podcasting Training Certificate course. Check it out at https://edusation.com/masterclass. Come and join the fun. Thank you very much for listening, and remember, stay tuned.